Gus, can you shake? Do you know shake? Shake. I usually recommend no dogs learn how to shake. This is Gus, and this is his roadmap to success. I would recommend this house doesn't practice shake because he puts his paws up and he paws at people for attention. See if I'll get him to do it here. We've of course done a leave it and drop it and a lot of other exercises in his session, so you see he's not as boisterous about it as he was before. But if a dog puts his paw on top of you, that's a dominance move. And so if you're petting him and they stop and go like that, and he goes like that, and you start petting him, or while you're petting him, he goes like that. He's telling you what to do, and you're listening to him. I think fundamentally Gus's problem here is I think the lack of rules and structure and rewarding him for inappropriate actions and behaviors have confused him into thinking that he is in charge around the house. And so, like a lot of my guardians, a lot of my clients do, for dogs, they've rewarded the wrong things. For dogs, attention is very validating. Good attention, bad attention, pretty much the same thing. So think about it. When do we interact with our dogs? When our dog is barking at the window, we go over there and tell him no. When he puts his paw on us, we tell him not to do that. When he tries to jump in up here, do this. We correct the dog for all the wrong things. Well, dogs, it's validating to get your attention. So I'm going to do the wrong things because that's what I've been trained to do, because that's what gets the human to give me attention. So we started off the session by talking about ways we can use positive reinforcement and positive dog training to motivate the dog to want to do what we want. One of those things is what I call petting with a purpose. So if he nudges me like he was doing, instead of petting him for nudging me, he's telling me what to do. That tells him he's in charge, or validates his perception that he thinks he's in charge. So when he wants something from me, instead of actually giving him what he wants, I give him a counter order. I'm going to ask him to move away, and then when he comes back in, oh, this is one of the things we went over, out. So I'll talk about this because it just happened. I'll show you both. Sit. Sit. So he came over, he was nudging, he wants the treat that's in his hand. That's not getting him the treat. But as soon as I asked him to do something he wanted, I gave him some attention. So he had to earn that attention. Now, what I showed about the directional command is what I would want the family members to do is have 2 treats for every room, for every exit of every room, rephrase. And then basically we're going to go, in this room there's 2 exits. There's one here and there's one here. So tell the dog to leave the room is a punishment, really, almost. And a lot of times when we tell the dog to get out of the room, it's because we're upset about something. So it's like a double or triple negative for the dog. So what I do is I have 2 treats for every room, for every exit in every room. If I want to teach him this way, I touch his nose, and I toss the treat out just like I did, about 3 feet outside the room. When he goes out and licks it up, remember, anytime he gets a treat, he should hear the command word after the treat goes into his mouth, not before. So as soon as he licks it up, he hears the word out. Then the dog comes back in, I toss the second one. He comes back out, and then he comes back in. Then I go to this door and do it twice. Then I go in the kitchen, and while we're in the kitchen, I throw the treat into this room from the kitchen. So we help him practice leaving every room of the house. I'd like everybody in the family to do this with each room in the exit in each room of the house once a day. So let's say there's 20 places where we can have him go in and out. Every member of the family would grab 2 treats, and we practice basically 40 treats, leaving each room twice. And after a week, when you say out, the dog runs out expecting to get the treat. Now we have kind of a circle here. We can go into the kitchen here or go through the kitchen and come around and come back into this room this way. So what we might do is let's say that the dog's, one of the rules is dog's not allowed to be in the kitchen when we're preparing food. Say the dog starts walking into the kitchen. Well, what we could do is mom could actually suggest treasure, and she says to one of the kids, treasure. The kid grabs like 4 or 5 treats, and then the kid goes around this way. Now the mom, pushes the dog back, or when the dog comes back in here, we tell the dog out, and the kid has already left a pile of treats here. So so basically the dog is in here, the kid comes around here, leaves the treats here outside of the kitchen. Mom says out, the dog has been trained and recognized that when it leaves the room, well, there's a pile of treats here. Out is a good thing. I didn't even see her throw a treat this time, and treats just appeared on the floor. And when he licks them up, each time we say out. And so we don't have to do that a lot, but that's what we call a jackpot, and that's like a good way of reinforcing it. This way we have a nice directional command. I do the same sort of thing if the dog's on the furniture. I touch their nose with the treat and I throw it around the ground. When they get off the furniture, I would say the word off. So now we have put it in context and made it easy for the dog to do that. We also showed the guardian how to train the dog to go to a dog bed. Kind of a similar principle. First one is I toss the treat on the dog bed. When the dog licks it up, I say the word of the dog bed. And each dog bed should have its own word or designation. Second way I do it is I leave one on the dog bed when the dog is away. and I just sit in the room and observe. Don't point it out. When the dog goes over and licks it up, I say the word beach or whatever the word is for the dog bed. And the third way I do it is I lead the dog onto the dog bed and put him to sit or lie down and pop the treat in their mouth and say the word beach instead of sit. And now after a while, the dog will start going over there on his own. When he does, you just say the word beach, or you can get up and go over and pet him and say the word beach, or give him a treat and say beach, or if you have some treats, when he goes over there, you just toss a treat. So at first it's to entice him to go there, then it's to reward him for going there. And that's we went over a number of rules that the guardians can incorporate, because rules and enforcing rules consistently helps us act like leaders for dogs. I don't remember if I've said this on camera or not, but dogs see us kind of the way we appear when we're home. We're kind of lazy. You know, we go to work and we come home, we're tired, and we sit and watch TV. The dogs are, man, they just sit around, they eat, they sleep, they fart, and they watch TV, and that's all they do. Well, they don't act like leaders for me. So the more that we enforce rules, that's another great way for the dog to see us acting like a leader. So if we don't allow them on the furniture, because for dogs, the higher they sit, the more rank or social status they have. Sitting the same height as us is one of the ways we confirm to a dog, yes, we are peers. And if the dog sees you as a peer, then listening to you is optional. Now, right now I have a treat in my hand. He knows I have a treat in my hand. We went over a focus exercise. Not a focus exercise, we did that too. But we also went over a leave it exercise. So if you forget how to do that, message me and I can show you how to do this. But I think the Guardian has it pretty well. So first thing we do is we'll hold the hand treat with a loose hand and wait for the dog to back off. And then with the other hand, give it the treat and say the word leave it after it goes in their mouth. And after a while, then I start tossing it on the ground like that, but then get ready to cage it. And then if the dog doesn't go for it, leave it. So I'm not giving them the one I actually drop, I'm giving it from my offhand or from my treat pouch. Now at first it's hand, then we drop it and we have to cage it, but eventually we can drop it like he leaves it like that, and then we start elongating how long he has to wait before he gets that treat. Now eventually I was telling the Guardian, I actually have a dog I'm training as a service dog, so I will have my apprentice go to Lowe's or somewhere and drop a whole bunch of treats on an aisle, and then we walk down the aisle, and every time I looks at it, I say, leave it, and he looks up, and then at the end of the aisle, now he gets a treat at the very end for leaving 20 things, or whatever it is. So, and the Guardian here is a teacher, so we want to kind of put a dog in a position to succeed. Anytime we're teaching a dog a new behavior, or if the dog misbehaves, the first thing we need to ask is, have I taught the dog how to behave? If we haven't taught the dog how to behave, then it's on us. That's our responsibility. So if I haven't, then what I do is I try to recreate the situation and break it down in individual steps and help the dog practice each individual step in the absolute easiest capacity possible. And we only move to the next step when the dog masters the first step. And eventually, once they can do all the steps individually, then I bring all the steps together, still in the easiest capacity possible. Then we gradually start adding in distractions and other things until we work our way back to the real world situation. And once that's the case, then the dog has been prepared and knows how to behave in that situation when it's live in real world. Most of us try to train our dogs in the moment, and that's the worst possible place to learn how to do things. Let me see. Other rules, not being allowed to be within 7 feet of any humans who are eating. For dogs, being within 7 feet of a human who's eating is a way of challenging for that food, which is, I think, in the video above, why the dog protests when the dog comes close to the humans when they're eating, or when the cats walk in the room while Gus is eating. So for other rules, just to help him feel comfortable, cats should not be on the countertops in any circumstance. And the more that the children feed the cat on the counter, they're rewarding the cat for doing that, and they're increasing the likelihood and the frequency of the cats doing that in the future. So the cats gets on the furniture, you immediately have them get down. And no longer feeding there, it's not sanitary, and it also is confusing for the dog. It makes some jealousy for the dog. It's like, why are they rewarded? They get to sit up higher than me, and they get fed. The humans don't feed me people food, and they don't let me on the counter. Why am I penalized? And so if you try to look at it from the dog's perspective, it's not an ideal situation. Now, cats are going to do their thing. That's fine. But when we're eating and things we can control where it's problematic, we want to add structure. So when he's eating food, the cat should not be in the kitchen. So we need to either make sure the cats are in a bedroom or in the basement or somewhere else temporarily while he's eating food. And we don't have to necessarily be there. If we want to have one person stationed here, person stationed on the other side of the kitchen, we don't let the cats in the kitchen while he's eating, that accomplishes the same thing. But now he sees us acting like a leader and looking out for his best interest, so he doesn't have to do it on his own. Now, he put the cat in his mouth the other day, and he didn't bite the cat or do any damage. He could very easily. And dogs do progress, so we don't want him to get better and better at this and feel like they're not listening to me, I have to give them a harder rebuke, and eventually it gets to the point where the cat gets hurt. We don't want any animal to get hurt. So the more that the humans take care of this, the more the dog sees the humans as the authority figure. And I don't have to protect myself. Now also, like I said, the dog should see the humans eating first. And so just 5 or more bites if we're not going to eat our actual meal, but it'd be better if he eats after we eat our actual meal. Let me see what else. Another rule I talked about in the other video is the dog has to sit at the door. So I go to the door and I say sit, and tell the dog, don't ask the dog. If he doesn't sit within about 2 or 3 seconds, then walk away, grab a magazine or a book or something, read for wait 1 minute, then go back to the door and tell him, commanding, sit. If he doesn't sit within 3 seconds, I walk away this time for 2 minutes, next time for 4 minutes, then for 8 minutes. Keep on doubling the length of time until eventually when you go and tell him to sit, he sits. As soon as he does, open that door and let him out. And eventually you can do it in both directions. Eventually what will happen is he will go and sit at the door to ask to go in or out. Now I'm going to circle back around to what I call petting with a purpose. The more that we pet him with a purpose, the more the humans are, again, acting like a leader, but also it's teaching him proper manners. If I want a human to pet me, I have to go and sit in front of them. Because every time I go and sit in front of the human, they pet me now. And the way we teach that is when he comes and nudges us or paws at us, instead of following his order, we give him a counter order. Tell him to sit. As soon as he sits, try to pet him under his chin whenever possible, never on top of the head. And say just the word sit. Not good sit, not good boy, not, oh, what a smart dog, Gus, you sat down. Just the command word. And also how you say it matters. If I tell him to sit and he sits, I go, sit. To a dog, those sound like completely different commands. So say it just the same way each time. So when the dog learns, if I tell the human what to do, pet me, give me attention by invading their personal space or nudging them, they don't do anything. But if they tell me what to do and I do it, I get rewarded. And after a while, what will happen is the dog will come start sitting in front of you to prepay for attention. Now for kids, I often tell, and prepaying for attention leads me to what I call passive training. Passive training is just simply recognizing and rewarding the dog within 3 seconds anytime he does an action or a command that we want. So if he comes to me on his own, I'm going to pet him and say, come. If he sits down next to me, I'm going to pet him and say, sit. If he lays down, I say, crash. Guardian's going to come up with their own words for it. But if he does those things voluntarily and that gets me my attention, well, instead of now having to misbehave like I talked about earlier, the dogs misbehave to get the attention, well, now we've taught him doing good things gets my attention. So I have 2 watchwords for this. I say paycheck if I suspect somebody's petting without a purpose. And if somebody comes in the room, sees me petting Gus, and Gus is standing, I say paycheck, I stop petting. I tell him to sit. When I sit, I pet him on his chin, say sit, and I say, I asked him to sit before he came in, you just didn't see it. He stood up. And that's okay. But even if I just want to pet him, I'm still going to tell him to sit. And then I can pet him for 8 hours after that. He just has to do something to change his state. Or eventually he'll come and start sitting in front of the humans to prepay for attention. Now, and then passive training is just, I say reward or recognize. If somebody says recognize to me, I just look at the dog and whatever he's doing, crash. Or if he's standing, I pet him and say come. Remember, you're only 3 seconds. If somebody sees it and they see it, that's 1 second. They tell me to do it, that's 2 seconds. If I ask them what I am rewarding, I've blown the 3-second window. So if somebody says recognize to me, I just turn to the dog that I was sitting, I pet it and say sit. Just narrate whatever it's doing. Now, these are the 2 easiest ways of rewarding your dog. Training your dog, really, because if everyone gets in the habit of doing it, every time you pet your dog, it becomes a micro obedience training session you do without even thinking about it. Now, one of the other things I noticed is the dog gets into people's personal space, and a lot of that is he's nudging and leaning for attention. Now, the carpet here, we have kind of an unusual pattern. Let's say that I'm sitting right here, and I could basically make this like line. This is like the designated no entry point. So we want to help the dog practice not invading our personal space. There's nothing wrong with the dog jumping up on me if I invite the dog or putting his knee here. Right now he's doing those things without permission from the humans. And that shows a lack of respect for them as authority figures. So I'd like the humans to start practicing enforcing a 1-foot bubble of personal space. And if the dog invades it, we're going to use the escalating consequences I went over. We're going to hiss first. That doesn't work. We're going to stand up. That doesn't work. We march at the dog. Now remember, once we march at the dog, we're going to wait for the dog to be stationary. Then step back, left foot, right foot, and pause. Pause for a second to see if the dog starts coming towards you, you hiss and rush right back at him. And then you're going to do back and forth a couple times until eventually you take the steps back and he stops. Now when you step back, a lot of people take multiple steps. So left foot, right foot, 1 foot move only with the only foot, and then we pause and we wait. And keep your hips pointed at the dog. Then take 2 more steps back and pause. And eventually the dog will learn to stay. We practice this, having the guardian keep the dog in here as well as out of the kitchen. And so remember, if you forget how to do those things, make sure you let me know. But also, whenever possible, try to recreate situations and help the dog practice. So like before we eat dinner, instead of actually just sitting down and eating dinner, when we're hungry, we're eating and we're preoccupied with eating, and the dog comes nearby, we got to get the cats out, we're focused on the wrong things. And our tempo and our timing and technique is slow. So what I do instead is get a piece of roast beef, microwave it. Sit at the table at our normal spots with the table set, and then we cut it up into little pieces, and we've all cut it up. If the dog tries to come in the kitchen, we stand up and we go and march the dog out. And we practice that over and over until the dog sits or lies down beyond the boundary. Then we put up the roast beef when we serve our actual meal. We can also practice that with somebody eating a snack here in the living room and any other room in the house. But whenever possible, try to recreate the situation in an easy capacity. Help the dog practice individual steps, and then gradually work your way back up to the real world situation. Eventually, the dog will just come and sit outside the door and just wait for you guys to finish eating dinner. Then he comes in. And we don't have to worry about him violating or getting upset with the cats, because the cats are out of the deal. So again, I think a lot of his issues, he's a good dog. He really has a couple of major issues. Careful your finger. But he's a good dog. But for the most part, I think he just has gotten confused, and he thinks he's doing his humans a service by correcting the cats, and jumping at people at the window and all the rest of those things. The more we enforce rules, reward desired actions and behaviors through passive training, the more we pet him with a purpose, the more he's going to start to see us acting like leaders, and then we take that burden of responsibility off his shoulders, and the pressure that comes from that, and the stress that comes from that. He can relax a lot more, and he doesn't have to worry about sweat all the little things. Now, I also went over a focus exercise. A focus exercise, you hold a treat. I hold it between the thumb and forefinger, and then I collapse it on, so I'm protecting it with my knee. Then I have a handful of treats here. And I hold it like this, and I wait, and the dog's going to lick my hand, then lick this hand. I wait for the dog to stop. When he looks up at me, then I raise it to my nose, and I go straight to his mouth, and I say the word focus after it goes into his mouth. So then I immediately reload, so the dog knows we're still playing. After a while, he'll just pretty much be staring at you. At first, it's 1 second, 1 second. Eventually, it's 1 second, 2 seconds. And then eventually 1 second, 20 seconds. Now, it should be about within a week. So I'd like all the members of the family to be practicing the focus exercise once a day for a week, for about 5 to 8 treats for each person, and do it in different parts of the house. And so eventually, maybe I'm first. I do 1 second, 1 second for all 12 treats. The next person might go 1 second, 2 seconds for the second movement only for all 12 treats. Third person might go 1 second, 3 seconds. So kind of check in with each other, let you know, everybody else know where we're at with those. But eventually we get to the point where you say focus, and the dog just stops what it's doing and looks up at you, and then you can pull out a treat or give it a little affection, but you've redirected their attention away from something they were going to get in trouble with. I also like the guardians practice the leave it exercise, again, in different locations in the house. For leave it, we want to have maybe about 5 or 6 treats as well, and each person practice that once a day in different parts of the house. So again, the dog gets practiced at doing that. And again, like I described earlier, look for ways to make it more difficult by moving further away or increasing the length of time. Probably time first and then distance second. Let me see, what else? Exercise. The guardian exercises him about 20 minutes, I think, is what you were saying. And typically after school, late afternoon, early evening. Dogs generally do better if they have more exercise early in the day. Sometimes you need to just sprinkle out throughout the day. Now, he's not a fetching dog, but he did like the laser, and he wasn't too manic about it. So laser might not be a bad thing to run him around laps in the backyard when it's dark. Make sure it doesn't have a full stomach. Dogs have what's known as a distended stomach. It'll swing like a pendulum. It can actually flip over and pressurize. So no dog should be exercised for at least an hour, preferably about an hour and a half after eating before they get exercised. So maybe we take him out, the mom goes in, and I'd like mom to get in a habit of doing this on a regular basis. So if it becomes part of your routine, it just becomes second nature, and if you don't do it, you almost feel guilty. But he's not a super high energy dog, but I think if we could take him for a walk in the morning, that's really going to help. Even if it's just a 15, 20-minute walk around the morning, then we come back from school, we take him for another walk, and then the evening we do a little bit of a laser. Just increasing his exercise a little bit, I think, will be beneficial. All right, is there anything I'm forgetting that you can think of? I covered a lot in 3 hours, but if the guardian has any questions, I want you to call me or text me. If I don't hear from you, I assume everything is going great. So if there's a problem, don't wait. The sooner that you message me, the faster I can get to helping you. But if I don't hear from you, I assume that everything's great, because that's our culture. If we have a problem, we complain. If everything's great, we don't call and say, that guy was awesome. Well, some of my clients do. So if you could, I would appreciate it. There's a reason I have hundreds of 5-star reviews, because I really am there to support my clients, and I want to make sure And if something stops working, the sooner you message me, the sooner we can make little adjustments without needing to come out and then get you back on track. But I'll have some people like, I didn't want to bug you, it was a minor deal, and then it becomes a major deal. So I want you to, don't think about it as bugging me, I want you to contact me. That's why why you have my personal cell phone number. All right, well, Gus, you want a treat? Could we possibly be a little bit more lazy about it? How about this one right there? I'm gonna get it. There we go. This is Gus. Sit. Sit. Remember, treat first, command word afterwards. This is Gus, and this is Gus's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it. Isn't that right, buddy? Shake, and don't practice shake anymore.